Hello, fellow book readers. My name is John, and today I'm going to go over what I read in November. I know this is a little late, but I've been sick all week. Still very sick, actually. I actually got COVID. I tested positive for COVID on Monday, so still not up to complete strength yet, but I do feel I'm able to talk today. So I want to do the November read video before it got too late. In November, I read 15 books. It was a very good month of reading. I wouldn't say it was a great month of reading. Some of the short story collections that I said I was going to read, I did read, and some of them fell flat, some didn't. But I did get a 5-star read in here as well, and there's been some great reads, so I want to go over them all just sort of briefly and give some small reviews for each. So the first book I read in November and finished was The Midnight Circus by Jane Yolen. It is one of her 4 short story collection books. Loved it. I loved this book. I gave it 3.5 stars. I thought it was very good. Don't get me wrong, not every story hit, but I think there was 15 short stories in this collection, or 16, something like that. And almost all of them hit. They're all fantasy, so it's a collection of fantasy short stories. It's called The Midnight Circus because these are her stories that are a little bit darker than some of her other stories. So this collection is centered around more of like a dark theming, and I thought she did a really good job with that. Like there's some great stories in here. There's one with this fisherman that I thought was just like really strong. There's a vampire story in here and involves Antarctica. It's really good. There's a weaver who weaves the future. That was like a great story. There's this one that takes place in Central Park where these shapeshifter humans are, and I thought it was very good. There's just a lot here to like. Don't get me wrong, not everything's gonna hit. There's some that was like overtly weird, with like angels and stuff that didn't land for me as well as some of the rest of hers did, which is why I only got 3.5 stars out of 4. But 3.5 stars on my rating system again is a very good book. So I thought this is a very good collection, and I think everybody should try a Jane Yolen collection because there isn't that many short story collections that are like just fantasy, and her short stories are just fantasy. I mean, don't get me wrong, some of them are fairy tale-ish, but fairy tale is fantasy. So okay, and the next one I read, I actually have the physical book for, is the Tales of Beedle the Bard by J.K. Rowling. These are her Wizarding World of Harry Potter short stories. They don't, involve the characters from Harry Potter, but these stories all are all like canonical in that world, if that makes sense. So yeah, in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, Albus Dumbledore gifts the Tales of Beedle the Bard to Hermione Granger, and yeah, this is just that book. It has 5 short stories in it. It's very, very short. There's only 5 short stories in it, but all the short stories are still good, like good to great. So I did give this 3 stars. 3 stars to me is a good book. I think this is a good book. It would be higher if it was just had a little bit more to it. Because again, the 5 short stories are all very, very short. They're all like under 10 pages. So, but after each short story, you get commentary from Albus Dumbledore, which I think is fascinating and really fun and really works. And one of the short stories here is obviously the Tale of the 3 Brothers, which you actually get to hear in the Deathly Hallows, but you also get Dumbledore's commentary after it, which is a cool addition. But yeah, I really liked all 5 of these short stories. Obviously, the Tale of the 3 Brothers is my favorite, but there's one that's about a fountain. I think it's called the Fairy Fountain or something like that, which is really, really, really good. It's another standout one for me. And you'll get to hear about more of these stories when I do my top 50 favorite short stories of all time, because a couple of these make the list. Okay, next up is the Demigod Files by Rick Riordan. This is another one I gave 3 stars to. Like the Tales of the Beedle and the Bard, there just isn't much here. There's 3 stories. You get 3 short stories, and a couple bonus things. There's like a jigsaw puzzle, and there's a word search, and there's interviews with different characters from the Percy Jackson universe. So there's a couple bonus things here, but really the main crux is these 3 stories, and again, they're all short. They're all under 20 pages each, so they're very short stories, very short stories, but they're all quite good, especially the Sword of Hades, which is the final of the 3 short stories. That short story is very, very good, but there just isn't much here, and I wouldn't pay like full price for this because again, there's just not much here. But it is on Kindle Unlimited, so I don't know if it's Kindle Unlimited. I got this from my library. If it's in your library, pick it up because it is worth reading, especially if you like the Percy Jackson series. All 3 of these stories take place in the Percy Jackson series. They all have Percy Jackson as the main character. Yeah, they're worth reading if you can get access to it for free. I wouldn't exactly pay like $20 for this because there just isn't much here. But it was a fun read. It is good. 3 stars. Okay, next up is The Happy Prince and Other Tales by Oscar Wilde. I think I may have read some Oscar Wilde when I was like a young kid, but I couldn't remember any of his stuff. That was a long time ago. So I read this, and I was happy I did. I gave this 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed The Happy Prince. The main short story in the collection was really good. But there was also some other good stories, especially I think it's called The Selfish Giant. That story was amazing. And, of course, The Nightingale and the Rose. Definitely worth reading this, too. That's classic. So, yeah, I'm happy I read this. These stories are classic, well-known short stories. Obviously, Oscar Wilde's like a major writer in terms of classic literature. This is not fantasy at all. There's no fantasy in here. These are all just straight, I would call it speculative fiction, but really it's classic literature. But they're short stories, and they were worth reading, especially the 3 that I had mentioned. I think there was 6 short stories at all, or maybe 7 in this collection. The last 2 were a little There was one like about a firecracker that was just kind of like, I didn't need that. So that's why this isn't higher, because the end of the collection just isn't as good as the beginning of the collection. But the beginning of the collection is great. If you haven't read The Happy Prince and The Selfish Giant and The Nightingale and the Rose, try and go out of your way to find them. These are all public domain, so you don't have to, pay any money to read them. But if you do want to own one of his collections, if you can find one that's just called The Happy Prince and Other Tales, it's very good. It's worth reading. Okay, and then we finally get back to George R.R. Martin, and we have Dreamsongs Volume 2. Now, I did read Dreamsongs Volume 1 last year, and I thought that was great. I gave that 4 stars. I loved that. There was 22 short stories in there. Well, short fiction. Some of them were novellas. Some of them were novelettes. But 22 short fiction from George's earlier career, and 19 of them landed for me, which is a crap ton. If you have 19 stories in your short story collection that land for me, that's awesome. Not the case this time. There's only 11 short stories in here. Well, short stories / novellas / screenplays. And I think only like 5 or 6 of them landed for me. Yeah, this one's just... I gave it 2.5 stars when I finished it initially, but as I got further away from it, I actually think it's a little better than that. I'll give it 3 stars. It's good, but it's not any better than good. Now, don't get me wrong, the highs of this are really strong. The Skin Trade, which is his tax collector werewolf novella, is awesome. So good. One of my favorite non-A Song of Ice and Fire things I've read from George R.R. Martin. That's so good. Worth reading, and I don't know where else you can read it, but I'm sure it's in other stuff. It's in some of his old collections, I think, but those aren't in print anymore. That's worth getting that for. That's worth getting this for that alone. On Sound Variations, which is his sort of chess fantasy story, really good. I enjoyed that so much. Portraits of His Children, which is the closing short story in this collection, is awesome. It's about like all these characters that an author has written and they come to life. It's just so good, so worth reading. And of course, you got the first Dunk and Egg novella in here, The Hedge Knight. Awesome novella, but like, if you're gonna want to read Dunk and Egg, just buy A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. You don't have to buy Dreamsongs Volume 2, which only has 1 of the 3 stories in it. But don't get me wrong, that novella is amazing. It's perfect. And some of his screenplays were fun. The Twilight Zone there's 2 screenplays in here. The Twilight Zone episode that he wrote was very fun to read. I wasn't really a fan of the other screenplay. But that's part of the problem here is 2 of the 11 stories are screenplays. 2 of them are tough stories. And Tough is fine. The Tough voyaging stuff is fine. Like, I like Tough. It's good. But I don't think Tough is like a great character. And I don't think those stories are great. They're just good. And then you have Wild Cards, which is his which is his superhero stories. I just don't find superhero stories in prose to be all that like fun to read, and especially these superheroes, because this is more like if you ever seen the movie Hancock, it's like that style, like urban fantasy superheroes, and it's a shared universe. So he's not even writing his own characters. Some of these stories, there's 2 in here, and they're both very long, and I thought they were just bad. I did not enjoy them. And then there's some really hard sci-fi in here, and I like George's hard sci-fi, but the 2 that are in this one just didn't hit for me, especially the Glass Flower. I just didn't enjoy that as much. So yeah, this one's it's just good. I can't say it's great, but there is some great stories in here, but it is a mixed bag, and there's only 11 in here, and like I said, 2 of them are screenplays, so it's really just 9. And then next up is the Paper Menagerie and Other Stories by Ken Liu. This is the first Ken Liu story or book I ever read, and it was worth it. 3.5 stars, very good. But the highs of this are way better than 3.5. The highs of this are like 5 stars. Like the regular, that novella, that sort of fantasy, science fiction, detective, action, romance type novella, that ruled. The title story, The Paper Menagerie, which is just a short story, it's actually like kind of very short. I think only like 15 pages or so. Everybody should read that. It's one of the best short stories I've ever read. I loved it. It made me cry. Like it's such a good short story. The highs of this are super high. They're like 5-star level high. But there is some stuff here that just didn't land for me. Like some of this hard science fiction stuff didn't land for me. And there's a novella at the end of here which is more like history than anything. I just wasn't in the mood for like a dark history when I read it. I think it was like objectively a good story. It just didn't like hit for me at the moment. I think if I read it at a different point, it would have hit better. So yeah, this is 3.5 stars. It's a very good and one of the best short story collections I've read, and everybody should read it if you're into short stories. Definitely check it out because this is a great blend of fantasy, history, and science fiction. Okay, next up is Squire and Knight by Scott Chantler. This is a graphic novel. It's part of a duology of graphic novels. I didn't read the second one yet, but this first one was very good. I gave it 3.5 stars. The art in here is awesome. Now, this is a graphic novel, and I shouldn't say graphic. It's a graphic fantasy novel for children. It involves a dragon and a knight and a squire, and the squire is a small child, obviously, and he's sort of the real hero of the tale. And there's some really good slapstick humor in here. I thought the art it popped on the pages. The colors he used was really good. Now, I don't own the physical edition. I read this on my Kindle, but the color popped really well. Yeah, I love this one so much. It's 3.5 stars. It's very short. I can't quite give it better than 3.5 stars, but it hit everything that I wanted it to hit. It's great middle grade fantasy. If you like middle grade fantasy, or if you like graphic novels, or if you like both, check it out for sure. Okay, then next up, one of the best novellas that I've ever read, The Emperor's Soul by Brandon Sanderson. I gave this 4 stars. It was great. Great. You can read it in 3 hours. Really strong novella with a great magic system, a great world, great characters, really easy to root for a protagonist, and a really easy to root against antagonist. And it's just like an aesthetically pleasing type of novel. Like you can see things in your head the way they're described. They're described really well and really colorful. Everything pops. Yeah, just can't talk about this novella enough. And it's epic fantasy. It's epic fantasy and a novella. This is how epic fantasy and novellas can work. I wish there were more of them. There just isn't as many as you would think there should be. And it's a standalone, so it's part of the Cosmere, but you can read it as a standalone. It's really perfect. I would recommend it to everybody. Okay, and then next up is The Mountain Crown by Karin Lowachee. This is part of a trilogy of fantasy novellas. So yeah, this isn't a standalone epic fantasy novella, but I was trying to read some novellas this month, and I found this set, which is a trilogy. I only read the first one so far. What I will say it was good. It was as much epic fantasy as you could pack into a novella as possible. Now the problem with that is, I think he kind of had world builder's disease a little bit. So he throws a lot of names at you, a lot of places, a lot of magic, and he gives things that already have names different names. Like dragons are called something different in this, and the magic has a name, and there's different not races, but like societies of people, and they all have different names, and it's like, what's the culture here? And they all have different cultures. So there's a lot of world building thrown at you, and it doesn't really pause to let you breathe, because this thing's only 125 pages. So it's just a lot packed into that. So I think the novella suffers from that a little bit, which is why it's only 3 stars from me. But like I said, it's still good. The dragon part was really the best was the highlight, because this is about dragons, obviously, and I enjoyed the dragon rider aspect of this, because it's sort of that Anne McCaffrey type dragon person connection, and I thought the author did a really, really, really admirable job with that, and I thought the climax was spot on perfect, and it really set up the next book really well, which I haven't gotten to yet, but I will get to it in the future, I think, because they're all very short, like I said, and I enjoyed the first one enough to continue. Okay, then I read a fantasy duology, and I'm just going to review them both together, because why not? I have similar thoughts about each. She Who Became the Sun and He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan. I gave both of these 2.5 stars. I did not really enjoy my time here, but I didn't hate my time either. I thought they were just okay. They each had different flaws. So the first book had the flaw where I just thought the book kind of dragged pacing-wise. The tone she used was just kind of weird, and it didn't land for me. It felt like she was ratcheting things up a little bit too high all the time, so nothing felt really that high. And to top that off, I thought that some of the stuff she was throwing at me was like not my favorite, because this was sold to me as a historical fantasy, but the fantasy aspect of it just doesn't really exist in the first book. Like, they keep talking about this magic and this mandate, but there really isn't any magic or anything in the first book. Like, they just talk about it, but you never really see it, and it's never really explained what it is. So it really just felt like I was reading a historical fiction, which is fine. But the problem was they kept hinting at a fantasy that they didn't deliver on. So that really bothered me. But I kept pushing through, and the climax of this was both shocking and good. So the book delivered in the end, but it just took too long to get there. Like, it really took forever to get to the end. And then the second book, He Who Drowned the World, you do get that fantasy element. There is magic, and it's shown to you, and what they were talking about finally comes, and that part's good. But the problem with the second book is they introduce another point of view character, and the new point of view character just isn't interesting. And it's not just like a small point of view character; they're littered throughout the book. Their point of view chapters, and that dragged the pacing down again for me. So it was like both books had pacing issues, but for different reasons. And I don't think the end of the second book was quite as good as the end of the first book, even though it was still good. So for that reason, it's another 2.5 star read for me, just because the book had real pacing issues, and I really just, every time I got to this point of view character, I didn't want to read them. So yeah, these books were just okay for me. I wish they landed just a little bit stronger for me, but they did. Okay, then we got Empire of the Dawn, which is the third and final book in the Empire of the Vampire trilogy by J. Kristoff. I have a full review for that book, which I'll link down below. I gave that book 5 stars. I'm not going to go into it because I did a full review on it, but I loved it. I do acknowledge that this book is not... I said it in my review that the ending for this isn't going to land for everybody. Some people are not going to like it, so I don't think it's going to be like a uniform 5 stars for everybody. But personally, the end made me smile, and I enjoyed the way he landed the plane in the series. So it loses no points there for me. I thought the end was nearly perfect, if not perfect. And I loved the way they got to the end. The way they got to the end was foreshadowed perfect, and the story they told was 5 stars perfect, and the planning was perfect, and the character work here was amazing, and I just loved being in this world. So yeah, this is a 5-star read for me. Okay, then we got That Way Lies Camelot by Janny Wurts. She is known for her Wars and Light fantasy series, which are all very, very, very big books. This is her short story collection that is just like fantasy and sci-fi short stories. It's not connected to that series at all. But in her introduction here, she said she never thought that she was much of a short story writer, and she always considered herself more of a long fiction writer. But then she was surprised to find out that she had enough short stories that she can make a collection with. And you know what? I should have known what I was in for after I read that collection, because I think I read a Janny Wurts standalone novel before. She is a much more long fiction writer than she is a short fiction writer. Her short fiction writing just feels a little incomplete almost. It feels like she needed to go a little bit farther with it. It feels like she wanted to go a little bit farther with these stories, but she couldn't because they were short stories. So that was my main issue with this. I only gave this 2 stars. It was just okay. There were a couple stories in here that really worked for me. I love the one about the tree. Then there was this series of short stories that involved this elf tribe, and there's a bunch of short stories involved. I think there's 5 short stories that involve this elf tribe in this book. They all involve the same character, and I thought the first 2 of those were very good. But the other 3 were just we're going back to these characters again. It feels like she should have just wrote a novel with these characters instead of 5 different short stories. So it felt like she wanted to do. And then there were these hard science fiction short stories in here, and they were following the same cast of characters again in each of these 5 short science fiction short stories, and none of them worked for me. And I was like, why didn't she just write a novel? It felt like that's what she wanted to do. So yeah, this short story collection just had a bunch of problems for me. Just in general, it felt like she wanted to write long fiction, but she couldn't, and there's just a bunch of short fiction that felt somewhat incomplete. But like I said, there's a few stories in here that are epic, as much epic fantasy as she could put into a short story she did, and I really admire those 3 or 4 that are in here that I quite enjoyed. But there's 17 or 18 or something like that short stories in here, and most of them fall kind of flat. Plus, I don't think she writes nearly as good sci-fi as she does fantasy, and half of this collection is science fiction. So, and then we got Smoke and Mirrors, which is Neil Gaiman's short story collection. This is one of my least favorite books I've read this year. I gave this 1 star. I actively hated my time reading it. My problem is I don't know who this is marketed to, because it's not marketed towards fantasy fans. There's not much fantasy in here. It's not really marketed towards science fiction fans. There's really not much science fiction in here. It's not marketed towards horror fans. There's really not much horror in here. I guess it's speculative fiction, but it's not entertaining speculative fiction, or what I would call good speculative fiction. I basically enjoyed none of these stories, and there's some poems in here too. So maybe people that like poetry would like this. I don't hate poetry, but I didn't find the poetry in here to be compelling. There was one story in here about a holy grail. I thought that story was good, not great, but good. And then every other short story in here, I actively hated reading. So I think I'm just out on any more Neil Gaiman books. I liked Coraline a lot. Graveyard Book was good, not great, but I did think it was good. But Good Omens and this, 2 of my least favorite books I've read in the past 2 years. And so I think I'm just done reading Neil Gaiman, and I don't feel bad about it. And then I finally closed the month off with a classic novel, and that is The Pictures of Dorian Gray by Oscar Wilde. After reading his short story collection, I wanted to read one of his other works, and I was in the mood to read a classic. So I read Pictures of Dorian Gray. I loved it. It's easy 4 stars for me. It's a great book. The twists and turns of our main character are very interesting. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're looking for a lovable protagonist or somebody to root for, this is not going to be the book for you, because the main character here is an ass. And the person who is sort of corrupting him, I wouldn't say maliciously, but kind of maliciously, is also an ass. But you really feel bad for the painter here, who's a really good guy, and you're rooting for him. But that's all I'll say about that. Yeah, just really worth your time reading. And the main plot of the book is our main character Dorian Gray gets a picture painted of him, and he wishes that the picture took all his age and all his flaws, and he's able to stay beautiful for the rest of his life. And of course, he kind of goes a little bit crazy because of that, and the picture turns sort of grotesque, but he stays beautiful. And then, of course, there's a twist ending. Great book. If you're into classics, I would highly recommend it. And that is all 15 of the books I read this month. My throat is actually really starting to hurt, so I'm going to wrap up the video now. But this video is late, I know that. I hope to get out 2 videos next week. I'm not sure exactly what they're going to be yet. I might start my top 50 best short stories. I might start my best trilogies, or my top 10 favorite trilogies. Or I might start my end of the year stuff where I go over my favorite books for the year, my favorite authors of the year, my favorite, characters that I read this year. I'm not exactly sure what's going to come yet, but I do plan to release multiple videos per week this month. I know I didn't get to do that this week, but that's because of the COVID, which, if you hear it in my voice, I apologize. That's going to be it for now. Let me know what you read last month down below, or if you read any of the same stuff I've read, let me know what you thought. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you next week about it.